Everybody know what gamification is? We'll talk about it in a second, but anybody use LinkedIn, right? Anybody use Yelp? Anybody use Nike Fitbit or Nike Fuel? Any of that kind of stuff? Those are all gamifications examples. And what you're going to see is, and we'll talk about, is basically gamification in data, because we drive a lot of data and a lot of useful data. So here we roll. Here we go. So right now, companies are challenged, and you guys have a lot of data. The world is generating more and more and more data. The kind of devices we mentioned just at the beginning are examples of that. And the problem that we have, though, is there's so much data coming in from so many different ways. You know, we're sometimes having problems interpreting all of it or actually defining the data in the first place in a way that would be meaningful to you guys. And so right now, they tend to focus on things like traffic sources, campaigns, visitors, these kind of things. And we at Badgeville believe that actually what we should be focusing on are users and what they actually do. So, do I like technology products? Have I written a review? Have I bought this thing before? All of these kind of things are important to understanding intent and figuring out what people are doing and try to drive positive outcomes. So, common cliche you hear all the time is, how do I make my data more actionable? And the answer isn't throwing up more views and more pie charts and all these kind of views. It's really about figuring out how to put the data in a context so you can figure out correlation and, you know, if you're lucky and hit the jackpot, some causation. And so to do that, one way you can do that is through gamification. And so gamification, or what we call as behavior management, is an approach to change the way we interact with technology and with each other. And we do that how? We do that by making the interactions for people and technology more personalized and more rewarding. So it turns out that even with getting all this data, why is this important? Well, it turns out that for people you analyze for, customers, businesses, partners, 55%, if you think about even the loyalty space itself, all these loyalty programs where I'm earning airline miles or I'm earning to get something, 55% of people who are enrolled in those things don't participate. You got 70% who never log into these communities. So I've created a community for my website or for my business, and nobody's going into them. And lastly, you know, 50% of enterprise software, and I think it's in the trillions of dollars now in terms of sales, goes unused. And so one approach to solve that is what we do, which is gamification. And in fact, it turns out that by 70% of Global 2000 orgs will have at least one app that's gamified by 2014. So why does it work? So, last thing. So gamification, basically making it personal and rewarding, is really about taking techniques from gaming, so the things that intrinsically motivate people, and applying them to non-gaming contexts, just if I hadn't made that bridge for you before. So if you think about the progress you make or the things you win, all those kind of things when you're playing video games, those are the kind of motivations. Now, how does it work and why does it work? Well, it turns out that gamification taps into motivators that are bigger than money. So if anybody know who Dan Pink is? He's a psychologist, but he's basically very into workplace motivation. He talks about three things called autonomy, mastery, and purpose, which are the reasons that people do things. And it turns out that he's a big proponent of it and kind of a starter of this kind of stuff. And gamification essentially uses those psychological motivations to tap into our needs to grow. So you say, how are we growing? What does growth mean, right? Well, it turns out that people are generally motivated by four things. You take a guess, anybody? Anybody have one? Well, successful. What does successful mean? Successful means winning. So I could be winning, I could be overcoming an obstacle. Why do people mountain climb? Why do they join teams? It's to win most of the time. They also do things to feel socially valued, to feel important. And so that could be anything from being having status and reputation, that they're the best programmer, you're the best analyst, you're the best person in your type of field of analytics. Or it could just be a connection that I'm part of something bigger than myself. So far, so good? All right, number 3. People like to feel smart. I like to feel smart. I think you guys like to feel smart too, otherwise you wouldn't be at this kind of conference with lots of smart people talking about big things. And then the fourth thing is that people like to feel structured. And that actually comes from two things. Kind of the world is a scary place, and so human beings tend to want to order and structure and control things. And it's kind of a drive that you have internally that you don't even realize. But if you think of things like the LinkedIn progress bar, which we mentioned earlier, your need to complete that thing and make progress, the need to keep doing steps to get your degree, any of those kind of things, all of these mechanisms have been around forever, and they're in your daily life whether you realize it or not. But these are the kind of motivations that drive people to do things. So, okay, I get those motivations. Now the question is, how do I engage and how do I actually do that kind of stuff? Well, it turns out, number one, reward your users and do it in real time if you can. Telling people how they're doing, where they're going, and keeping them in kind of a tight feedback loop is one way you can move people along and make them happier, more content. And if you think back to, I know this is funny, but if you think back to a time when you were a little kid or have little kids, do you know what the most important motivator for them usually is? It's feeling that they're doing well. So if you ever noticed a sport you tried and you tried it right away and you were good at it right away, guess what? You're a soccer player or you're a tennis player or a ballerina or whatever because you did that right away and you had a good experience. You have a bad experience, not so much. So rewarding and the kind of rush you get from that is very, very important. Number two, reputation. So showcasing a person's status or their reputation, be it through whatever context you could. A leaderboard is an overly simple example, but showing that you're winning, showing that you have status and reputation, that you're the number one sales guy, matters to some people. There's a bunch of ways to do that, by the way. I mean, if you look at, everybody knows Stack Overflow? Use Stack Overflow the way they call out. They're giving you status and reputation for answering technical questions that may help other people. And the third thing you can do is you can connect people with each other and you can connect them to relevant information. We're living in a world with so many problems with attention and with broad, wide, deep data and information that getting to the article you want, getting to the person you want, understanding what's going on is kind of a crucial thing. And so, again, these actually tie back to the first two as kind of an accelerator. So if you think about the first kind of mechanics in terms of I'm earning things, I'm making progress, I'm feeling smart by getting rewarded along the way, I'm showcasing how well I'm doing. Well, the ability to make that social is a way to amplify those effects. And what does that do? That generates a lot of data, which is why we're here. And the ability to see this data, to generate this data, and then to act on it is really, really important as we kind of move into the future. If you think about it, gamification is going to provide new types of data and insight that most organizations haven't seen before. Normally we've kind of gone in this kind of progression where at first, I can't put actual dates on this, but first we have demographics. This person, I'm a middle-aged white male, I don't want to lie about my age, 35, right? So that's all they know, and then they basically set up marketing and advertising and try to target based on that, through frequency and reach programs on TV or what have you. And to the next phase, which kind of was up into the 90s and beginning of the 2K, it's all about psychographics. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you're interested in, and I'll build a profile based on that. The problem is, what people tell you they like is much different than what they actually do. We all know that. So what's happening is we're moving into an area of what we would call behavior graphics, for lack of a better term, but basically the ability to figure out what people are doing and cluster them and group them based on what their interests and affinities are as shown by their actions, not necessarily by what they say they want to do or the fact that I'm a balding 35-year-old guy. So in terms of the data that's generated from the behavior graphics, you can kind of think of it in two ways. One is aggregated data, which we'll talk about in a second, but the other is personalized data, right? If you have better user data about a given individual person, you can obviously present more tailored experiences to them, which with the goal of driving longer-term engagement. So here's an example. This is Monica, and Monica is from San Francisco. Monica likes to run a lot. And she likes to talk about running, she likes to run, she likes to tweet about running. But what you can start to do is build a picture of what Monica's actually doing, and you can actually incentivize her to do more by rewarding her and setting up a structure for her to feel good, to feel socially valued, to feel like she's winning in whatever her goals are. Maybe she's trying to run a 10K. So in this example, this is one of our customers, active trainers. So if you guys know Team in Training, this is actually rewarding Monica for running a lot, for competing in different events that she wants to, and it actually even knows that she's part of the Northern California running group. So again, personalized and targeted information gives you the ability to create a personalized and rewarding experience, which is motivating to a specific individual. On the business side, you may have a similar situation where you have a customer service associate. I don't know, we'll call him Ralph. I don't know what his real name is. And Ralph would do things like update the knowledge base, close tickets when people call and complain, collaborate with other people to solve problems of other users, and maybe even share methods with his team or the community on how to solve things. And in that way, what you can do is you can set up different types of incentives, recognition, motivation, in order to move him along on his personal growth and journey. Again, going back to those 4 things, if I think I'm advancing in my job because I'm feeling successful or I'm feeling socially valued, I'm much more inclined to keep with what I'm doing and do it better than what I would if I'm not. And the personalized data and understanding about these people is a way to drive that kind of result. On the other side, we have something like aggregated data. So aggregated data is what you guys see all the time. But what's interesting is now you can look at things in additional ways if you're not already. So for us, the genesis of the company comes from social gaming and from free-to-play gaming as well as a bunch of other things. We usually looked at things in terms of a couple of different buckets. One is user growth. Is the population growing? Is the population shrinking? What does the churn look like? Which, of course, goes to the ways that you kind of look at things like with retention and daily return rates. You know, are people who are coming in time period T0, are they coming back in T1, or are they leaving and then being reactivated in time period T2? And what that allows us to do is to figure out how new users are coming in terms of acquisition, whether they're churning out. It allows us to do cohort segmentation, all of those kind of things, again, to figure out how people are reacting to the environment and the ecosystem they're in. So on the consumer side, you may see something like MTV in Canada, which is one of the things we power. And what they actually do is they run a programming schedule of different events, the VMA Awards, the new Justin Bieber album, the new Justin Timberlake album, whatever it is, and basically watch how their cohorts react to the offers and the promotions and things they're doing. What are they tweeting about? What are they posting about, etc. So this kind of approach with behavioral stuff really helps. It's really an interesting way to look at stuff. The one thing I would tell you in terms of the data and the interaction in the system, if I were to give kind of any counsel on how to analyze this stuff and how to use this stuff, is really to think of this stuff as a program versus a project. In other words, the keys to this kind of thing is to put something out there, analyze what's going on, and then gain insight from what's going on so that you can tune the program. Because the one thing, as we all know as human beings, is that people change as they get more familiar and more mature with any kind of experience. New people are coming in and coming out all the time. So at any snapshot in time, what you had 3 months ago isn't what you have now. So it's really important to set up some type of cycle where you apply your thing, you put it out there, you track and analyze what's going on as a result, and then you try to derive insight, from whatever correlations and things that you see going on in the system. And that's especially true on the consumer side, because what happens is even the consumer offering may be changed regardless of what we're doing in terms of tracking and recording. And then finally, you would design an update and kind of lather, rinse, repeat again. So how's it being used? I mentioned the MTV stuff. I don't have a slide for that. Apologize. But what I can show you is a couple of other examples, both in consumer and enterprise space. So everybody familiar with Samsung? So Samsung.com has a site, and what do you think people do on their site? They go in to decide, well, do I want to buy this TV? I just bought my TV, should I go register that product? Or they sometimes, unfortunately, go in and complain about their product. That's a small piece, though. But the thing is, Samsung was interested in doing other things. They want to get a conversation. They want people who are looking at TVs to start looking at phones or their Galaxy tab. Or they want people to see what kind of charitable things they're doing or what kind of product innovation they're doing. And so what we did is we worked with them to power something called Samsung Nation. And Samsung Nation basically rewarded them in a kind of a loyalty fashion for contributing, sharing, posting, giving their opinions and product reviews based on those 4 forms of growth we mentioned earlier. And the result was they actually generated about 4 times as many customer advocates as they had prior to the site being launched. So why is that important, do you say? Well, the answer is a customer advocate has a lifetime value of about 5 times a normal person with your product. So on the consumer side, I don't know if you guys are familiar with EMC. They're a huge giant. They do data storage and virtualization. And EMC has a community of about 250,000 developers, partners, employees, et cetera, around the world. And what they needed to do is they needed to get these community partners and stuff more engaged. So they created a gamified program that rewarded people from everything from contributing and showing expertise in their forums, answering questions, to attending events, viewing sessions, all that kind of thing. And again, the same question comes up, well, why is this important? Well, it turns out that rolling this kind of program out, EMC was able to boost their community participation by about 40%. And that translates actually in hard numbers to when a person who contributes more basically spends about 250% more money with EMC than a normal customer. So that's why they care. Here's a strange one. I mean, you guys do a lot. How many people code here? Everybody codes? Codes, writes scripts, does, different analysis. So Citrix is another company with power, and this is actually part of the QA cycle. So Citrix wanted to go out and gamify their process in terms of bugs, fixing, test case writing, scripts. And it turns out by doing just this kind of thing to give engineers and employees what they care about, which is feeling smart, giving them some recognition, and setting up with the right way, they were actually able to reduce late code reviews by over 40%. They're getting their stuff done on time, they're getting it in at high quality, which results in a lot of positive value for Citrix as they can get product out the door faster. And lastly, you guys know Oracle Open World was, last week? So we helped power Oracle Open World just for people going to do events like this. So they got incentivized to go and visit different booths and watch the America's Cup and do different things. And as simple as it is, just offering them kind of random prizes and this kind of thing and making it fun, actually generated a lot of fun for us and a lot of benefit for Oracle last week. So lastly, what does Badgeville have to do with all this? Well, we actually are a platform. We're a cloud-based platform. We're SaaS. And what we do is we actually enable this kind of both tracking, analysis, and incentivization. So we're taking psychology, like you say, psychology and sociology, and using the kind of things you do to turn around and drive more positive behavior, which results in a better experience for the user and a better experience for the companies that power it and that use it. And what we realize, though, it's interesting, is that this really is a balance of art and science. And that with the platform that does all of these things, you also need an understanding of the best practices of the insight that people like you would give from or get from looking at all the data has to be turned into action, right? So that's what we've created something called the Behavior Lab. That's actually why I'm here. That's what I run at Badgeville. And what we do is we try to help the industry with best practices and understanding about design so that the experiences that people have are kind of more rewarding and we try to close off that cycle of test, try, iterate, which leads to both success on the individual and on the company level. So, kind of in closing and summary, gamification is not about badges. If I put an Xbox in your office, have I gamified your workplace? I don't think so. What I've done is I've given a distraction where everybody's going to go play Call of Duty when nobody else is looking. What it's really about is creating experiences and using techniques from the game industry and other psychological techniques to basically motivate and then to use the data that's generated to gain insight and drive business transformation. So thank you very, very much. Really appreciate your time today.